All right, Sesame Street always had a word for the day, and definitely the word for today is sultry. It is a sultry day out here today. There's a breeze, but you can barely feel it. It's more there for ambiance than any relief, I think. Oh, that aside, I'm had a wonderful time this morning in my practice, and I wanted to share some of the occurrences that came. There's this important statement that we made yesterday that God is not a concept, and that ideation is a nodule or a wrinkle in your dishcloth of Brahman, the absolute ideal, that ultimate reality. All of that being said, I did some work this morning with that following your breath idea of just keeping your attention on breathing. And I'm going to share some ideas that just came into my head, doing that practice of observing the thoughts as they come and go. But there were some beautiful thoughts, and I wanted to hold on to them, which is probably why I'm still here trying. One of the thoughts that came across was this being, not being capital B, this be as in verb. Hearing your breath is a witness to a contract with the divine. The breath is a sign of your awareness of awareness. Ramana Maharshi says that there is awareness and then there's awareness of awareness. And we in this state are the awareness of that awareness. Now we elaborate on it quite a bit to make quite a huge sculpture of self that we cram on top of that. But this beautiful contract that you have with the beloved, and I say the beloved because I have this strong inkling that the nature of this self isn't nullness, that it's Satchit Ananda. The last three things I think that a person will yell out in ecstasy before dissolving into the one absolute is that Satchit Ananda. And that is love, that is existence, and that is intelligence of a full potential, a pure potential. And in this contract of your own existence, this allowance that we have of knowing the self or being a watcher of the self, third partying ourselves, I like to say. We step outside of ourself and we've stepped outside of the divine, and we're sort of watching a triad in our practice. This breathing self, this awareness of the awareness, is like a candle, and that breath is its flame. The brightness of the flame is intelligence, and the warmth of the flame is love. We know that instinctively because when you look at somebody who's very intelligent, what do you call them? He's always a very bright person. They're manifesting intelligence very clearly. There's not a whole lot of mental noise blocking their ideas. And someone who's very loving, what do we call them? Well, we say they're a very warm person. And our goal is to have a flame that's burning, bright, and warm, but above all undisturbed. And that's where the ideas of a controlled mind come into play, or an idea of the pure mind, a mind with very little me and mine in it. You see, we keep stirring off these little eddies in the pool of our mind, these little whirlpools, and every desire that you have causes a whirlpool. If you think of something that is pleasurable, it becomes the center of a whirlpool, and what whirls around it is your thoughts, your memories, your ideas, your desires around that pleasure. And depending on your commitment to contemplating that pleasure, that whirlpool can get very large. That whirlpool can actually take over an entire life. And so our idea is to calm the mind first to the extent where you can recognize a whirlpool in it. If you've got a mind that looks like the ocean in a storm, it's hard to identify any particular whirlpool in there because there's just so much going on. And that's the standard modern mind. So when I talk about these things, I'm talking about something that's within a context that I have to admit I sometimes forget, that there's 20 years of practice behind a lot of these experiments. There's a lot of work to do just to get the mind in a state where it can actually be accurately observed, to where you can actually see what's happening in it. And for some people that might take like many years, and some people may take just a few days. Our goal is not to let the mind wander off and not to let the attention get caught up in any of these whirlpools, because when you do that, you get away from the candle as such. You get away from your brightness and your warmth. And when you get away from your brightness and your warmth, or actually move your attention away from your brightness and your warmth, then yourself looks for that brightness and warmth in other things. And if you have whirlpools going on, that's where it looks. And that's called delusion. That's when you get all caught up in your notion of self, which is wrong ideation, the wrong ideas of self. So in meditation right now, I'm doing sort of a hybrid. You know, I've been doing mantra meditation for the last 25 years or so. So I'm very hesitant to let go of my mantra. It's very special to me at this point, and it's given me so much of an idea of love and so much access to that warmth of the heart, that cave of the heart, in the words of St. John of the Cross. And so I very much enjoy that space and very much like that space. I understand it needs to be transcended and set aside. That will come, I'm sure. But adding to that, this idea of the breath, which is an old idea, and I've heard it for years, but I've only been really studying it this last month or so, makes it all the more imminent. You know, to repeat my mantra, there's a lot of ideation involved in that, a lot of imagery that comes to mind, and a lot of relationship that is developed in that. But in the idea of being present with breath, it's a very pure form of being, of quieting the mind. And it's instantly accessible always, and it's a very direct metaphor. With the mantra, you kind of have to train yourself to have that mantra always going, to always be present, and so that's an added step. With being aware of the breath is always going. All that's needed is you to turn your awareness on it. And to make the breath a mantra, you know, is quite delightful. Especially when you do have some fundamental ideation around it, a little bit, you know, for the starter, let's say, for those of us that are still, that haven't realized our realization, that haven't realized we're realized. But to take that time and have some ideation that this is a contract between you and pure love, you and pure existence, you and pure intelligence. It's a sign that you will never be parted. The breath is always present. It's the sign of your very own existence. And it's that contract, that bond between you, the awareness of awareness, and the awareness itself. So that was from this morning's sitting. You can see how noisy my mind is, how much work there is to be done. I share it with you anyway.